On this episode of the Just in Time podcast with Justin Kutcher,
we all lost the opportunity to see what I would consider a direct counterpart to Michael Jordan. LeBron James is the best high school player I've ever seen. And, I'd seen Kobe Bryant, Kevin Garnett, and all that in high school. He was better. Our freshman year, it was a rough ride. I mean, people were calling for Coach K's head.
Would you say Grant Hill is the best player to ever come out of Duke?
Yes. Yeah. Leitner's the most accomplished, but Grant was the most talented and I think the best.
The greatest sports moments happen in seconds, but the stories behind them are timeless. Dive into the mind of the icons who live those moments. No filters, just authentic conversations about the moments that define careers. I'm Justin Kutcher, and this is the Just in Time podcast.
Welcome to another edition of the Just in Time podcast with Justin Kutcher. I'm joined now by the lead college basketball analyst for ESPN, and really so much more than that. But Jay Bilas, Jay, it's awesome to have you here on the program. Thank you so much for joining me. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. This is very cool.
Yeah, for me, this is so much fun because I get to talk to just awesome people about their lives, storytelling. I got a chance to do an episode with Bill Raftery, who you and I both know so well. And so I'm sitting here going, you know what? I've got to get Bilas' side of this story and everything. So I really appreciate you doing that. And we're going to talk about Raf and life with him on the road and everything about that. But I see the LA on the hat, and you're an LA kid. You went to Duke, early years of Coach K. How did you go from LA to Durham, North Carolina for a young coach in Coach K?
Yeah, it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense, really. But when I was coming out of high school in 1982, Coach K started recruiting me when I was about 17 years old. And honestly, Justin, I had never heard of him when he first called me. And I had not had what I would call a great relationship with my high school coach.
Okay.
And I had a great relationship with my teammates. We had a fabulous time. We played together from fourth grade all the way through high school. And we were great friends and remain great friends to this day. But it was just an odd relationship with our high school coach. And even at that age, as a teenager, I knew that college was the only time I was going to get to choose who I played for. That really every other stage of basketball, your coach was there and there was nothing you could do about it. Not that I would have done anything about it in most cases, but in my high school case, I would have. And so I didn't want to screw that up. So I was basically, even though I'm sure the NCAA doesn't like hearing this or college presidents, but I really wasn't choosing a school. I was choosing a coach. And I figured that the coach I wanted to play for would be at a school I wanted to go to. And, now that being said, if Coach K was at, Southern Montana Junior College, I wouldn't have gone there. But Duke was not on my radar. I had heard of Duke through the 1978 championship game, the Final Four, with Jaminski and Spanarkel and Banks and Denard and those guys, Bob Bender. But I didn't even know where it was. I knew it was on the East Coast, but I didn't know what city, state. I knew a little bit about the ACC, but that was about it. I was a UCLA fan growing up. So my and back then, there was no internet back then.
Right.
You read people's names in Street and Smith and you knew who the good players were. But I didn't have, back then when somebody said, hey, the game of the week is on, that was literal. There was one college basketball game on a week and everything else was just local. So I didn't have a vast knowledge of, hey, Duke is in Durham, North Carolina, Chapel Hill is 8 miles down the road and NC State's a half hour away. You didn't know all that.
Right.
So excuse me, when he started recruiting me and I visited, I just liked him the best, truthfully. I came down to Coach K, Lute Olson at Iowa, Jim Boeheim at Syracuse, and a gentleman named Ted Owens at Kansas. And those were my final four coaches. And Coach K was he was the least well-known and the least accomplished at that time. And I just liked him the best. There was something about him that I trusted. And at the end of it, I want to play for him, and that was the deciding factor.
So, what was a young Coach K like?
a little more volatile back then. I didn't really process that he had played for Bob Knight.
Yeah.
So, he was louder at that time. I mean, he still, even to his last day of coaching, he could get loud, but he was certainly more patient, I would say. That's probably the best way to term it. He wasn't as patient as we were building it. So every mistake was pointed out in a way that you're like, whoa, I'm not going to do that again. He was great. Like I don't know that I could say what the best thing was, but one of the best things was no matter how things went in practice or in games, he didn't carry that over into, your daily interaction. So if he wasn't happy with the way you were playing or the way we were playing, it didn't affect, when you came by the office to pick up your mail and saw him, it wasn't like, you didn't grab that. He wasn't like that.
Yeah.
But in practice, he was the real deal. I mean, it was very there. It wasn't rigid, but you knew who was boss, and you'd better do it right, or you were going to hear about it.
Did he have like a militaristic feel to practice and his regiment because of his background?
A little bit. Everything was timed out, but if we didn't do it right, we went overtime in that segment of practice. But I never, that's an interesting question. I mean, I never really thought of it as being militaristic. I thought of it as being precise. Like everything was precise. And, we basically started all freshmen my freshman year. And so it was a rude awakening for us that, you're going against all junior and senior laden teams that were lottery picks. And my freshman year, my senior year in high school, North Carolina won the national championship with Worthy and Perkins and Jordan, those guys, Matt Doherty. And then my freshman year, NC State won it with that, cardiac pack team. And it seemed like every team in the league, except for us and Georgia Tech and maybe Clemson, were not only NCAA tournament teams, but nationally ranked. There were only 8 teams in the ACC back then, and all of them were legit. So you could go 7. Back then, there were 14 league games before you went to the ACC tournament. And if you went 7-7, you were ranked in the top 20 in the country because the league was so strong.
So going back to the ACC, you already reeled off some names. One name that wasn't mentioned there, I think you probably played against him, was Len Bias.
Mm-hmm.
What was he like to go up against? What did we all get cheated out of by not seeing him in the NBA?
Oh, well, we all lost the opportunity to see what I would consider a direct counterpart to Michael Jordan. That I feel like that would have been the battle, those two. And I'm sure Jordan is probably insulted by that. He gets insulted by everything if anybody's compared to him. But Bias was the real thing. And we were the same year in school. And so played against each other and knew each other. My teammates from Washington, D.C. knew him better. They were great friends with him. But I got to know him a little bit throughout the 4 years. And then we went barnstorming after our senior year, just before he passed. And, we looked at him like Superman. I mean, he was built out of steel, magnificent jump shooter at 6'8", and a really powerful leaper, dunker, rebounder. He had everything. And so I don't doubt that he would have been a perennial all-star and Hall of Fame contender, things like that. He was that kind of player. I mean, I remember Coach K saying that he felt like the 80s and maybe into the 90s. I don't remember exactly what he said, but that the 80s were the best time in the ACC because everybody stuck around for 4 years. So, and I think I remember him saying that there were 3 players during his time there, and maybe I'm remembering it from not his last year, but maybe 15 years before he retired. That you had Jordan, Bias, and Ralph Sampson. And those were the guys, the 3 guys that stood out. I mean, I would add a few others, like Mark Price was tremendous, and certainly a lot of the players that Coach K had, I would put up there as well. But those 3 that I played against as opponents, and Mark Price as well, were the best we went against.
It's funny, I forget that Mark Price, Georgia Tech, was right there. I mean,
He
what
was
a
our year
career he
too.
had.
Yeah, he was our year
Gosh,
too. And Georgia Tech was actually like North Carolina was Duke's biggest rival, but I think our biggest rival was Georgia Tech because we came in at the same time. We both teams. Bobby Cremens was coaching them, and they had Mark Price, John Salley, Dwayne Farrell, and Craig Neal and Bruce Dalrymple, all those guys, Yvonne Joseph, and we were in the same position and rose up at the same time. And we were kind of beat up as freshmen, and then we got to be really good as sophomores and nationally ranked, and then top 10 teams and top 5 teams as we went through it. So they were like our mirror image. So we kind of measured ourselves against them. So our games against them were every bit as intense as the games we had against North Carolina.
I was looking back at your teammates at Duke. Just some of the names that came to mind, like Johnny Dawkins, Tommy Amaker, Billy King, Danny Ferry, Quinn Snyder. These are all guys who, I mean, went on and have gone on to do huge things in the sport of basketball. What was it like, though, when you guys were just in college? Like, could you tell that each of these guys had something different about them?
Yes. I think Johnny Dawkins is the most important player that Duke's ever had.
I've heard you say that.
I
Why?
can't, it's hard to say that because I can't really speak to what happened in the 60s and 50s and all that stuff, but at least in the coach.
But at least Duke became Duke under Coach K.
Yeah. Yeah. And Duke doesn't become Duke without Johnny Dawkins. He was our best player, and Mark Allery wasn't far behind. But without Johnny Dawkins, we would have been good, but he made us really good, maybe even great. And one of the signature stars of the league. And then David Henderson and Mark Allery were just two amazing teammates. Mark was a great player, maybe the best shooter that we had, and David was the toughest player. And Mark played in the NBA for 8 years before he was injured, kind of flamed out because of injury. And then David played in the NBA and then has been in the NBA for a long time. He's the head of scouting, I believe, with the Cleveland Cavaliers still. So most of us stayed, if you count broadcasting as staying in the game,
Yeah.
most of us stayed in the game to this day. And I mentioned that to Tommy Amaker one time that God, all of us are still in and around basketball. And I joked that none of us wanted to get a real job. And he said, no, that's not it. Our experience was so good, we wanted to duplicate that and kind of go forward with it. And I think he's right.
Was it the experience of being together? Was it Coach K? Was it Duke? What was it that you guys wanted to duplicate that?
I think it's a combination of those things that we wouldn't have been together without Coach K. And then the type of people, not just the type of player, but the type of people he recruited. It's just guys he wanted to be with and be around and play with, guys he respected and admired and loved. And I mean, one of the things, ESPN, there was somebody that came to me, I don't know how many years ago now, wanted to do a documentary on our recruiting class.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't crazy about the title. They called it The Class That Saved Coach K. And, I don't know that we saved anybody, but what really struck me was the things that we say about each other now when we're old men. We said then, because
Really?
they had film of it, of us saying the same things about each other at that time that we say now. And, oftentimes, I mean, I'm much older than you, but oftentimes as you get older, you tend to gain appreciation for things that happened before. So I kind of thought that the things we said now would be, kind of enhanced by time. And it turns out, in seeing all that stuff, it wasn't that, and I was kind of, I don't know what the right term, whether I was gratified by that or it made me feel good that we said that about each other at the time and that we had an appreciation for what we had while we had it. That's a pretty cool thing. And I think that group, even though we knew who the best player was, the best players, everybody had an appreciation what the others did. And that we each understood, hey, this guy is doing this, and what he's doing is hard, and that's a pretty nice thing to have within a team dynamic.
Of that group, who was the trash talker? Who was the leader? Who was the instigator?
We had a bunch of different leaders. Johnny was the out front guy. So, that was when, like, we were all the best player in our state or our area or something. But when we got together, I didn't realize that how difficult it was to be the best player on a team of that caliber. That when, if I didn't play well, we still won. Johnny didn't play well, we didn't win. And he had a lot of responsibility on his shoulders. So if I ever thought that, oh boy, I got to play well today because I'm guarding this guy, or I got to guard Brad Doherty, I got to have a good game, it didn't matter. It mattered whether Johnny played well, and if he didn't, and it was very rare that he didn't. But if he didn't, we didn't have near the chance to win. We might have won against a lesser opponent, but we're never going to beat one of the best teams. David Henderson was the toughest guy I ever played with, and he was probably the best trash talker of the group. He and Johnny were the best trash talkers. The best leader overall was Tommy Amaker. That was one of the things about that class that saved Coach K business, that you're like, okay, well, our class was important. I'm not denying that, but none of it works without Tommy Amaker. Like, when he was the missing element in our team, because our freshman year, Johnny Dawkins was the point guard, and he was a scoring guard. And so not that he couldn't lead a team, but he couldn't lead it like Tommy could. And so Tommy was the guy that kind of brought everything together and kept everybody together. And just, I used to call him he was a meticulous leader, but didn't do it in a way that made you think like he was telling you what to do. He wasn't a bark orders type leader, but he was like you did what he said because you knew what he said was right.
Yeah. 1986, this group goes to the Final Four, the first Final Four for Coach K. Where you started, where you finished, what do you think about that whole journey?
I think each one of us has said this separately and differently, but we won about 100 games over those 4 years. We didn't win much my freshman year. I think we won 11 games. And then my senior year, we won 37. We were 37-3. And the only losses we had were at North Carolina in the first game of the Dean Dome. And then we lost at Georgia Tech when we were ranked third and they were ranked second or something like that. And then we lost in the title game to Louisville. Those were our only losses. But other classes that Coach K has had have won more than us. But I wouldn't trade the experience we had for the experience that any other player has ever had at Duke. I don't care about any of that. Like the ride that we had, I don't think could be duplicated. And we learned so much about the game, about each other, about people, because our freshman year, it was a rough ride. I mean, people were calling for Coach K's head. We thought he might get fired. That was a big discussion point after the season, is, are they going to fire him? And if they do, what do we do? Like, I'm not staying here if they fire him. And thankfully they didn't. But it was not a pleasant situation. And then when we started really winning, and then everybody's on the bandwagon, and it's almost like they forgot what jerks they were our freshman year. And so, yeah, it made you a little bit, not distrustful, but it made you understand, like, this is a business, man. And the people who are patting you on the back were shaking their fists a couple years ago. So it all depends on the results as to what fans and boosters and supporters, what they think. And I think if you took, and some of them aren't living anymore, but if you took what people said publicly and privately in 1983 and showed it to them in 1986 or 1990 or whatever, they'd be embarrassed by what they said. And I'm not saying, look, I get it. I'm a fan too, and of different things, and I'm sure I'm out of line with my thought process about the Dodgers or stuff like that. But I'll never forget some of that stuff. I learned a lot.
I also think it's interesting how those players I named, so many of you actually went on to coach under Coach K, be his assistants. And there had to have been some special bond, something that happened while you guys were there that you all want to go back and coach under him. What do you think that was?
Well, another great thing about Coach K is he was really good about helping you accomplish what you wanted to accomplish, whether it's in the game or outside of it. So when I was being recruited, I was a young player in California, and like when you start to get good, maybe there'll be a newspaper article about you or something like that. And I would get asked a lot back then, what do you want to do after basketball? And I really didn't have a very good answer. Like I didn't want to be a doctor. I didn't want to be a lawyer. I wasn't thinking about any grand notions like that. I wanted to play basketball, and I wanted to do other things, but I didn't have a plan. So I knew that, okay, well, Frank Gifford went from football into the broadcast booth, and Don Drysdale did the same thing with baseball and all that. So I got that in my head, and I thought, well, maybe broadcasting. I didn't really know what I was talking about. And coaches read that and started recruiting me based on that. They'd say, okay, we have a really good communication. Syracuse did it. We have a really good communications department. And Coach K said, hey, we can help you with that if that's what you're interested in. And so he introduced me when I committed to Duke and went there. He introduced me to a guy named Chuck Howard, who was a producer with ABC Sports. And Chuck offered me jobs during the summer. So I worked as a production assistant for ABC Sports during the summer. So I worked the '84 Olympics, happened to be in LA, which was great. I did Monday Night Baseball. I did the PGA Championship one year. I worked bowling events with Chris Schenkel and Nelson Burton Jr. and stuff like that. So I got into the broadcast field essentially by being a production assistant, getting people coffee and fixing their airline tickets. And I was a timeout coordinator. I worked in the truck. I did all kinds of different stuff. And during the Olympics, I worked at the basketball venue, which made sense. Mm-hmm. But after I sat at the scorer's table during the Olympics, and I had a headset on. And what I did was I would call out who committed the fouls to all the camera operators. And after a couple of days, I guess the other person doing it was somebody's nephew or something. And after a couple of days of work, the camera operator said, well, we want him. Because I knew who the foul was on before it was reported.
Right.
I guess because of the basketball background. So I called the foul out as soon as it was committed, so they get a shot of whoever committed the foul, stuff like that. So after day 2, I think it was, I worked every single basketball game at the Olympics.
Holy cow.
Women's games, men's games. I'm doing Saudi Arabia versus Nigeria women's game, whatever. Well, I'm making that up. I don't remember what it was, but I did every single game. And then, I was 20 years old. So I went out with my colleagues afterwards. I don't think I got more than 3 hours of sleep for 2 straight weeks. It was one of the coolest. And I had a credential that said technician on it. So I could go to any venue I wanted. So after basketball was over, I just went to all these other venues. I'm down on the track for the track and field when Carl Lewis was doing it. I went to boxing and swimming. It was awesome. It was really a fun few weeks.
Jay, I had no idea. I mean, your background there is a lot like my background, how I got into it. However, for you in '84, that was Bobby Knight coaching the Team USA, Michael Jordan kind of having that breakout performance, and yet you were also playing against those guys in college. So would any of them ever see you at the scorer's table and be like, "What the hell are you doing here?"
Couple times. What the funniest thing that happened was we were doing an exhibition game because the Olympic team before the Olympics would travel around the country and play these exhibition games against NBA players. They'd put an NBA All-Star team together. So we did one in Minnesota at the old Hubert Humphrey Dome.
Wow. Yep.
The Metrodome, I guess. And so the Olympic team had a practice at University of Minnesota in the field house there. in Williams. And so I went to one of the practices with my bosses, kind of the producer, director, all that, and some other people. And we were sitting, in the first couple rows of the stands, kind of behind the scorers table, and that's a raised floor. So the players are all stretching out. And Coach Knight came in and he threw everybody out. So he orders us out, and then as we're standing up, he goes, "Bilas, you stay." So I'm going, okay, what do I do?
Yeah.
Like, do I leave with my bosses who are paying me, or do I stay because Bob Knight just told me to stay? So I stayed, and I sat down, and then as soon as everybody kind of shuttled off, he said, "You sit down and shut the F up. This is my army." And he was just jerking me around because I played for Coach K, who played for him. And all the players were up there laughing, Patrick Ewing and those guys, and most of whom I knew because they knew he was jerking me around, but I wasn't sure for a while.
Yeah. That's incredible. Wow, I'm still in shock. So, okay, so 84, what was the coolest thing you saw at the Olympics?
At the Olympic, well, it was the first time I ever saw email because they had email at the venue. So everybody that worked there had an email address. So it's the first time I ever saw that. The coolest thing was probably, it was really cool going to other events because I
Right.
didn't have a lot of knowledge of those kind of things. And it was, it was like I was total fanboy, going to track and field and getting down on the field with that credential. But the games themselves were awesome. We didn't get on the air in the United States very much. There was a world feed and a US feed, and Digger Phelps was doing the games with Keith Jackson,
Wow.
and then Keith and Annie Myers Drysdale. She was Annie Myers back then,
Yeah.
dating Don Drysdale, but she did the games on the women's side. So it was really fun watching those games. I mean, I was working and concentrating on it, but the number of people that were there was close to where my parents live. So I saw a lot of people I knew. It was just a really kind of cool experience to go through, especially at that age, and one that I didn't take for granted. And some of the people I worked with, I wound up working with later on when I became a broadcaster. So it was amazing kind of how things went almost full circle that way.
So when you became the broadcaster, I'm guessing some of the people you worked with, maybe some of the camera operators, and were they just like, "Oh my God, dude, you made it. You made it. This is awesome."
Yeah, a few did that, and but it was more awesome for me, like seeing people you knew. I mean, one of the funny things that happened when I became an assistant, I played professional basketball for a
Yep.
few years overseas, and Coach K offered me a coaching job as a grad assistant, and I got into law school and went to law school at the same time. But we were playing at Notre Dame, and we, fortunately, we wound up winning the game. And so I thought, okay, after the game, I need to go up and because back then they didn't have these little league handshake lines that they have now. So I needed to go up and shake hands with Digger. So I went to shake hands with him, and he grabbed me by the neck, and he pulled. The game was on NBC, and he pulled me over right in front of a camera, and he's pointing at the camera, and he was telling me that, hey, we worked with this camera guy at the Olympics, and that all got on the air as NBC was going off the air, like me and Digger with
Yeah.
me in a headlock. And that night, like Coach K was off doing something else or back in the going back to the locker room or something, so you didn't see any of that. So I think it was that night we went back to. It might have been the next day. We went back to Durham, and we used to go to his house to watch film after games. So we were at his house. The game ends, and then he sees this, and he's like, "What the hell are you doing?" And I was like, "I can explain it to you, but you wouldn't."
Yeah.
And I just tried to get out of it. But yeah, I remember that very distinctly. Like, oh God, now I got to explain this.
So I'm glad you brought up being an assistant coach with Coach K, because the years that you were there, I think were 90 to 92.
Mm-hmm.
That was a pretty good run for the Duke Blue Devils. And this is like around the time where I'm really starting to get into college basketball. And that UNLV team of Larry Johnson, Stacey Augmon, Greg Anthony, Anderson Hunt, I mean, they're unbelievable. They beat you one year, you guys beat them the next year. How good was that team?
Unbelievably good. They didn't just beat us; they drubbed us. In the 1990 title game, NCAA championship game, they beat us by 30. It's still the largest margin of victory in a title game, and it was you thought like, can we play running clock? Like, let's get this over with. It was horrifying. But the next year, I remember this really well. In a staff meeting, I think it was Mike Bray had brought up that there's no reason to show them the tape of last year's game. Like, why show the tape of us getting bludgeoned? And it made sense to me. Like, why would we do that? And Coach K was like, no, we're showing it to them. Like, we're going to show them all the mistakes we made, and if we clean up this, clean up that, do a better job here, we'll be in the game at the end. And if we're in the game, we're going to win because we live in close games, and they don't. They haven't played a close game all year. And I thought about that actually. That rang true this year when Duke played Houston. That Duke hadn't played in many close games at all during the course of the year, and I think that kind of thing matters. And Duke wound up winning that game in '91, and I think, I mean, players would have to speak to this, but I really think that as we got toward the end of the game, what Coach K had been telling them all along, that if we're in the end of the game, if we're in this at the end of the game, we'll win.
Yeah.
Because, like, I think they took a lot of confidence from that down the stretch. And I do think that the fact that UNLV hadn't been there very often, if at all, during the course of the season, that affected them. Now, I don't know. I can't sit here and tell you, like, if we had played 10 times, would Duke win twice, or wouldn't have won the majority of the time? They were legit, man. I mean, Duke was really good too. Don't get me wrong, but do I think they were better? Yeah, and it was an amazing happening. It's one of those games like you'll never forget.
So what is it like on the sideline as a coach in that game, realizing like this is going to happen? Like we're going to beat them. We're going to pull off almost the impossible.
Yeah, I mean, it was really cool. I do remember after the game ended, like Coach K was like, "Hey, calm down, relax. This is not the end of this." And I don't think he wanted this jump around, acting like a championship had been won, because it hadn't. Because we'd been there a number of times and hadn't finished it off. My senior year in '86, whether it's '88, '89, they lost in the semifinals, that kind of thing. So he knew there was a lot more to do, and that victory wasn't going to resonate unless you won the whole thing. But that was one of those games where people probably don't remember the final as much because of the semifinal. That Final Four was really weird because both Duke and North Carolina were there, and there was this kind of not cloud, but there was this heavy feeling that, oh my God, what if it's Duke and Carolina in the final? Like, talk about the ultimate trump card in the fan argument over who's better. So that was a big deal. And Carolina played Kansas before we played UNLV, and Kansas wound up beating them. I think Dean Smith got ejected from the game. It was a really bizarre thing. A referee named Pete Pavia threw him out. And I'll never forget, like, Bill Guthridge, I thought he was going to kill Pavia after the game. And Bill was a really nice person and a gentleman, and he was livid. But anyway, when that game was over, that was a huge, that was in Indianapolis. So we had these huge, like, football locker rooms, and there were TVs in them. And so the players were stretching out or getting ready, and Coach K was in some little ante room that he would bring players in to show them film or something before the game. And when the buzzer went off and Carolina had lost and Kansas won, he came out of that room and basically said, "Hey, like, it's not okay for us to lose because they lost." Because that was kind of a feeling people had. Like, there was almost a sigh of relief that, okay, we don't have to deal with that. And, that sort of thing is off our backs. And he felt it and he addressed it. And it was meaningful. I think that had an important, like, kind of snapping people back into, like, this is about us, not about anybody else. And he had a great feel for things that way, about people's emotions. And Maybe because he was feeling it too. He's like, no, this is not the feeling that anybody needs to have. Let's address this right away.
Just hearing you and watch you talk about this and talk about, the upset, I almost feel like maybe this is doing a disservice, but it reminds me a lot of the 1980 Olympics with the US beating the Soviets and they're going crazy. But if they don't win the gold medal game, do people remember it? Is that crazy for me to think, to
No,
compare those two?
no, I think that's right. It was, and I think having been there before and not done it was helpful to Coach K, like having that experience of this is not over. And the whole point of this is to win the whole thing. And look, like getting to the championship game, like getting to the Final Four, those are huge deals, and it's something you never forget. But we had gone to the tournament and lost before the Final Four, my team, and for some reason that didn't hurt as much as losing in the title game. When you're right there and you're a possession away from winning the whole thing and having that for the rest of your life, and you don't get it, somehow losing, if you lose in the second round or something, it sucks.
Right.
It hurt, but it doesn't, like, I don't, when I watch the tournament every year, I'm not going, oh my God, I can't believe we lost to Washington in 1984. You go right to the title game. And it's a feeling that kind of never goes away. Like I don't cry over it or anything, and I'm not but there's this kind of pit in your stomach every year when the buzzer goes off for the title game, going, man, that should have been us. And that part of it never goes away. That's something I think about every year.
I'm glad you brought that up because it's a question I like to ask people I talk with. What's the game that kind of keeps you up at night? The game that you lose sleep over? It sounds like that was the
That
game
one.
for you.
Yeah, that one. There have been other ones. I mean, we lost a double overtime game at North Carolina that we had one and we let slip away and wound up losing in double overtime. We had it one in regulation, and you're kind of going, how often do you get a chance to do something like that? And then we wound up winning there the next year. But yeah, that one. And look, I'm older now, so it's not like I go over these things in my head. But that championship game experience was different than anything else. And I think it was Coach K's first one. So, and that's one of going back to what we were talking about before about I wouldn't trade anything. Um, I think Coach K's experience level going forward, like the players who played after us, played for a better coach than we did. Like Coach K was a better coach year after year after year. So obviously 15, 20 years later, how much better was he than he was with us? But I still wouldn't have traded it. But he's said this a couple times. He said, I wish I had been more experienced at that time. I could have helped you more. I don't know that it would have changed anything. And it's nice of him to say that. But I don't look back on that with a lot of what ifs. It's just kind of I haven't really watched the tape of it going, okay, if we had just done this, we would have won, or we hit this block out, we win, get this loose ball, we win. It wasn't that. It's just the overall feeling of man, it was right there. Like I thought we were the better team. All were like Louisville's.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
But I still think we were the better team. They shot over 50%. We shot in the 30s, and we lost by a bucket. Like I felt like we were better, but so what? We didn't win. But it's still it's funny. Like we beat Kansas in the semis, and Kansas was number 2. We were number 1. We had won 36 games. They'd won 35. At that time, that was the most wins on a basketball court at the same time in the history of the game. I'm sure it's changed since then. But Mark Turgeon, who is an outstanding coach at Wichita State and Maryland and all that, and Jacksonville, you name it, A&M. He was a player on that Kansas team, and he was talking about it one time when we were older men, and he got tears in his eyes talking about the loss to us. And you're going, like, these things are meaningful, and you put a lot into it, and when you lose a game you wanted to win, it leaves a hole. And you hope to, like, that's the difference between players and coaches. Like coaches get, like, and I'm very respectful of how difficult it is. Coach K had 40 plus shots at it.
Yep.
We had 4.
Correct.
And so when you get there and you don't do it, it's you're like, you don't get many chances.
You have to take me inside the huddle right now. 1992, Elite Eight against Kentucky. You're on that staff, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the Grant Hill pass to Christian Leitner. Take me inside, the timeout, the drawing up the play. Had you guys practice this in practice? Was it like, okay, we're going to this play? What happened?
Well, first of all, I don't know. I haven't really talked to too many of the players about this in all these years. I've talked with Tommy Amaker and Mike Bray about it, maybe Pete Gaudette, about the feeling after Sean Woods banked in that shot and we were down with 2.1 seconds or whatever it was. There was a feeling we were cooked, and like that was it. Like, so players can go on spring break and we had a great year. What are you going to do? That kind of stuff. And Coach K got him back in the huddle, and I don't remember actually hearing what he said because I was standing behind the huddle with Mike Bray, and Tommy was there, and I had my arms folded, trying to look like a coach and trying to act like I didn't see what I just saw. But we ran a play that we had run a lot in practice, and then we ran it earlier in the year against Wake Forest at Wake. And Grant threw this banana ball that went toward the left sideline, and Leitner caught it and then stepped out of bounds. Like, that's how bad the pass was.
Okay.
And so, when we went out and when the players went out, you're going, that last time we ran that play didn't work out very well.
Mm-hmm.
What are the chances? Like, you're kind of thinking, what are the chances? And back then, guys didn't make half court shots and stuff like that like they do now. Now they practice that stuff. And you're kind of figuring, okay, when the ball's in the air, they're going to treat that like a loose ball, climb somebody's back, get a hand on it. What are the chances we could even make the catch? And Leitner caught it. Everybody remembers caught it, and then he took a dribble, which I'm like, what are you doing? And made it. And when the shot went in, I don't really remember the feeling other than, oh my God. And I didn't know what to do. Because like I said before, there weren't the Little League handshakes back then where everybody lines up and shakes hands. So the players all ran after each other, and they were doing that stuff on the celebrating. And I kind of ran into the locker room. And then I got there and there was nobody else there. So I had to go back out. I went back out. I'm like, I realized like nobody else is coming in here, so I better go back out. So I went back out and then noticed something that I'll never forget. So you'll know the name, but not maybe your listeners won't. There was a man by the name of Kaywood Ledford, who was the legendary broadcaster for Kentucky. And that was he had announced his retirement. That was his last year. And as a result of Duke winning that game, that was his last broadcast.
Wow.
So Coach K went over to the Kentucky radio location and put a headset on as they were signing off, and wanted to congratulate Kaywood Ledford and then congratulate Kentucky about how great they were, how lucky, fortunate we were to win, stuff like that. I'll never forget that he had I don't even know what you call it, the presence of mind and the empathy that he was going to go over and do that. And it was a very cool thing. And, thinking beyond the moment when, you get all wrapped up in, oh my God, we won and how great is this and stuff like that. He thought beyond that. And I learned a lot during that moment.
That's incredible. I've never heard that story. I've never looked at the tape to see that. I don't know how many people would actually know that.
Well, the Kentucky people know it because they listen to it. Yeah, I think because I've heard it over the years, and I think they were getting into the sign-off period where they were about to leave the air when he came over. And it was a really nice thing to do, and empathetic thing to do.
That is, wow. That shot, I believe Vern Lundquist was on the call.
Yeah, Vern Lundquist and Len Elmore to the game.
Yep. And I was supposed to be doing homework, and I had the game on in my room. And when that shot went in, I just couldn't believe it because Duke had broken my heart as a Connecticut kid. Duke did it again in 1990?
90. Yeah.
Yep. Elite
Never
Eight at the
forget.
Meadowlands.
Yeah, that was a play called special when somebody wasn't guarding the inbound guy, which was Leitner. Coach K would just yell out special, which means throw it back to the inbound guy. And there was nobody guarding him, so he inbounded it. They threw it back to him, and he made that double clutch shot right around the 3-point line.
I had Coach Calhoun on this podcast, and I asked him the question about the game that keeps you up, and he said that game.
Yeah,
He goes, because we had that game won.
they did.
We should never have gone into overtime.
They're right. I mean, he's right, and that's the kind of thing where those details of playing to the buzzer, and back then. And Patino did the same thing. He didn't have anybody on Grant Hill, which, I maybe have been a mistake. I don't know. But you still having 5 guys back. I think especially now when the ball's in the air, it's a loose ball, go get it. And you have to climb somebody's back. They're not calling a foul. I think I've heard Rick say this, that one of the last things he told his team before they went out for that final play was don't foul. And, when the ball got to Leitner, I do remember Pelfrey and Feldhaus backed off because they didn't want to foul instead of go get it. Because I remember Rick Barnes saying that about lob passes. He goes, they throw the lob, it's a loose ball, go get it. And if you got to put somebody in the wood, go ahead. Don't let them do that. That kind of in different situations.
Yeah.
But it's hard for an official to call foul in those situations. It's got to be egregious. So, I get it. I get it what Jim's saying, but that's basketball. It's like if somebody, you got a 1-shot lead and somebody dunks one from the fairway, what are you going to do?
Right. I mean, but it's goes back. There's a lot of parallels actually, because that was Jim Calhoun's first time in that situation. And when he got in that situation again, he converted.
Mm-hmm.
You were with Coach K when you guys lost the national championship. When he got a chance again, he was able to convert. He got more experience and he was able to figure things out.
Yeah, that's true. But you still have other games where Coach K had all that experience and they lost. You're going to go through these situations where you're going to, you don't want to say win some, lose some, but you're going to have situations where it doesn't happen. And I think the one thing that 92 game against Kentucky taught me was I don't think there was a player on our team that thought we could win the game before the huddle. But Coach K got them believing we're going to win. And I'm sure Coach K thought, okay, still, what are the chances? But if we don't go out there believing we're going to win, then we have no chance.
Right.
If we believe we're going to do this, then we have a chance. So he gave them a chance, and they cashed in on it. But there were all kinds of situations with all the experience that he had and the players had where, they didn't have, mistakes get made. The guys you're playing are good. And I remember Matt Doherty saying that, the other team gets scholarships too. They're good. So you're gonna get beat sometimes, but that's sort of the competitors thing of. And I'm not sure I was good at this, but Coach K wanted you to his thing was we may lose, but don't be afraid to lose. We're not afraid of it, and he the whole number one thing, there were some coaches that would say, well, I'd rather not be number one. Who needs that? And his thing was, no, we want it. If they're handing it out, we want it. If somebody's voting for it, we want it. We'll take your best shot. He really wanted that.
Who started the floor slap?
We did. Well, as far as I know, I think we did.
So it was your class or after?
No, it was during my 4 years.
Okay.
We did it on possessions where we felt like we needed to stop. And then it became a thing, and it started to really annoy people probably in the 90s, when it started happening more often than, man, this is the biggest possession of the game type deal. It was more for us to say, okay, we're going to take a stand to communicate with each other rather than send some message to the other team or to the crowd or things like that. And then it became, then it became something that people could make fun of, they call it a meme now, but, it probably started getting really annoying when Wojo did it. And that's probably when, like, because Duke, we started to become really televised when we were in school.
Okay.
And then the TV stuff started really ratcheting up, that every time you turned around, Duke's on television, national television. So I get it. Like, I don't have any problem with, like, I don't like Duke, or I hate Duke. I don't have any problem. I get it. Because I was the same way growing up. I mean, when Notre Dame would come to play UCLA or USC in football and basketball, I mean, you were conditioned not to like Notre Dame. And so I get the whole I don't like Duke thing.
Yeah. I was thinking about Wojo. I was thinking about Bobby Hurley. Those were the guys that I remember, because I actually wore number 12 because of John Stockton, Wojo, and Matt Maloney. I was like, 3 great white point guards. And so, like, I wanted to be like those guys. Let's fast forward, though, because now you mentioned in '84 getting the chance to get inside work as, basically an official stats person, for lack of better terms, because you're calling out the fouls and whatnot. And Digger Phelps, you mentioned that time when you're an assistant coach and this and that. Now you get to broadcasting and you're with ESPN. Eventually you go to Big Monday, and it's you, Sean McDonough, and Bill Raftery. To this day, you could make a case that it's the best college basketball broadcast team ever. Just the 3 of you guys together, the amount of fun that you had, the games that you called. What was the first one that you guys all called together? Do you remember?
Yeah, I was at Notre Dame. So I get dropped into that duo that had been together for a while doing games for CBS and ESPN, and I felt horribly out of place. I'm sitting in between them, and I was thinking, what am I doing here? Like, you felt like you were like a third wheel dropped into a long-term marriage. And they were both great. They couldn't have been nicer and more accommodating. But when Notre Dame at that time had a kid named Danny Miller who had transferred in from Maryland, and so Danny Miller did something spectacular. I can't remember what he did, dunk, block shot, whatever it was. So McDonough calls the play, and then Raf says, "It's Miller time," and you know how I love hearing that. And then McDonough, without missing a beat, says, "Except on Big Monday, brought to you by Bud Light." And I was like, "Oh man, this is fantastic." And right from that moment, I felt more comfortable because I was laughing my ass off. But it was so much fun because all we did was bust on each other on and off the air. We went out all the time. Raftery was unbelievable. Pre-game, post-game, you name it. We would go in and see coaches. Like, I didn't really care to go in and see the coach right before the game because we had spent the day kind of in practice with him and all that, but we're going to go see him again. And that was just Raf's deal. He would just barge in, and not barge, but he would go in and say, "Hey, give us something, will you? Not the normal bullshit. Give us something we can use." Stuff like that. And it was just a blast all the time. And God forbid you made a mistake on the air if you mispronounced something or couldn't spit it out the right way. Those two would kill you. And we just had a blast. I was so appreciative of it at the time, but now even more so.
Why now even more so?
Because as great as my interactions are with my colleagues, and I work with unbelievable people. Like, there's never been anybody better than Dan Schulman in this business. But there was something about that crew that was different. And it was a level of fun added to trying to do a good job. Like, I think we all take our jobs seriously, but for some reason that, like, fun just emanated from that. There was no way to avoid the fun part, but when the game got serious, we were serious. And when it was time to have fun, we had fun. And, whether it was a 6 overtime game, like, I still remember that 6 overtime game between UConn and Syracuse in the Garden, and just sitting there in awe of McDonough, like, making those calls. And after the game, Raftery and I talked about it. The proudest thing we had in that game was that we stayed out of McDonough's way. Like my thing as an analyst, we used to be color commentators. Now we're analysts. Is stay out of the play-by-play guy's way. That it's his or her job to call the game. And my thing is, if my voice is ever heard on SportsCenter, I've effed up. Like that, I want to give Shulman and back then McDonough a clean call. They don't need to hear our analysis at the end of a game. They need to hear the call. And there's plenty of time for us to say what we think later. Let them have a clean call and then keep your mouth shut. And you'd have to ask Shulman and McDonough whether I do a good job at that. But I'm really a stickler about that. Like I hate and I can't remember if that's happened. There might be a shot that goes in and you go, oh, you might have a quick reaction like that. But I pride myself in my voice is not heard on a call when they replay it on SportsCenter.
This is what's really funny. I don't know if it's funny or just goes to show the type of character that you have and that Raf has. You both mentioned that 6 overtime game. And you both referenced, without me talking to you about it or me talking to Raf about it, that was the game where Sean McDonough, like his stock soared. Because you guys knew how good he was, but people then took note of how good he was. You both said it in different ways. Like you were saying, he nailed every call. He did. He nailed every call in that game. But it was just really interesting how Raf said to me, we knew he was special. After that game, everybody knew he was special. And you just said how he nailed every call, like you guys knew it.
Yeah, I mean, we did know it. And I do think other people knew it because Sean had called the World Series when he was like 30 years old or 29 years old, whatever it is. And I don't think there's anybody better in the big moment than he is. And I don't think there's anybody better at telling stories and weaving them in the course of a game than Sean is. And we used to joke about it. Like it was fantastic. So Sean would be telling a story about a player. And we embellish this kind of thing, but saying, Justin Kutcher playing with a heavy heart, his dog was struck by a car and has not been able to walk, and heavy heart, and then Raf to go, great look, and Sean would be like, and the next time out, he's like, really? Like you couldn't wait. Right in the middle of that story, kind of busted his chops about it. But I can't remember if it was the same game, but later on, Sean was saying something, guy makes a great pass, and then Raf lets some time go by, and then he goes, great look. It was funny only to us.
Did your cheeks hurt after those games? Because whenever I worked with Raf, like I would smile throughout the entire game, and I'd go to sleep at night. I'm like, oh my God, my face hurts right now.
Oh yeah. Oh God, yeah. He just, and that was the fun part about it. Like he made everything fun, and we weren't breaking rocks for a living and lifting heavy objects, and there were times in the game where it was just fun. But when it got down to the end of the game, like he's a meticulous preparation guy. He does it on his yellow legal pad, but he's as prepared as any human being could be for a game. And he does all the same things that the most X and O guy out there would do, but he weaves it in at the right time. Like that's sort of the genius of McDonough and Raftery is their timing. Like I think our job, yours and mine, whoever's in our position, the job is to say the right thing at the right time in the right tone. And those guys have had that, that trio of things to do nailed from day one.
Favorite spot? Like you guys went to Maui every year. I can't imagine the fun that you guys would have. You fly over to Maui, you're there for like a week or so. You're probably still on East Coast time. You're doing Hawaii time. Give me a good story from those days.
Back then, there was a guy that worked at he was a director of golf at the Kapalua Plantation course named Gary Planos. He's since passed away, but every year, Gary get in touch with us, say, hey, whenever you want to play, just let me know. So we would play golf every morning of the tournament. And Gary said, look, just go to the first tee, put a peg in the ground when it's dark, and as soon as you can see the ball, hit it, and you guys go. So we were first off every day at the plantation course where they play them, they play the Mercedes. I don't know what it's called now, but they still play it every year.
Century, yeah.
Yeah, it's a fantastic golf course. So we would play every morning at Dark 30. And then we would go out every night to a restaurant called Longy's, which sadly.
Dark 30.
And we'd be out until they put the chairs up. And I still remember one night where, they're closing up and they kept telling us, like, guys, we got to close, we got to, and they took a drink out of Raf's hand because they go, Raf, we're going to lose our liquor license. You got to go. So they took a drink out of his hand and his response was, that's it. I'm not coming here anymore. We went there every night for 25 years. Yeah. And but one time we were playing golf and I was playing with Raf and McDonough, another friend of ours. And we had played the first 9 holes and I can't remember the game we were playing. Maybe it was a partners thing. We're dead even. And on number 10, I'd hit a pretty good tee shot. So I'm hitting last. And Raft hits his shot and knocks it to about 3 inches. And then he turns to me and he goes, suck on that, Dookie. Now, any other person says that, you're going to be pissed off. But Raft says it, and I fell on my knees laughing.
Your imitation of him is pretty darn good, too.
I've heard it so much. I mean, we had so many crazy stories. I mean, I tell them all the time.
It is the best part of our job, the relationships. And, the broadcast, that's awesome. That's fun. It's the hang before and after that makes this job the greatest.
And that's a great point. Like, you can miss out on this. I think when you're younger and you're trying to work your way up, you're so concentrated on doing a good job and making sure that, you nail what you're supposed to nail and your bosses see it and all that stuff and you're well regarded. But the best part of the job is the interactions with your colleagues. And if you can't enjoy that, because look, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether it's Raft or McDonough or Stephen A. Smith or you name anyone. Nobody's going to care when we're gone. They're not going to care. They're going to move on in 2 seconds. So you need to enjoy it. Like we got a really good job here. And early on in my career, it's a little bit different now. We don't get our schedules the same way as we used to. But back in the day, we got our full schedule. It might get adjusted through the course of the season. Kind of got your full schedule. And I always looked at it, and I would tell myself, all right, I'm happy with this. Like, I'm sure I could turn the TV on and go, well, that's a better game. How come I'm not that? Why am I not on that game? Like, I never did that. I looked at my schedule at the beginning of the year going, I'm happy with this. I'm gonna kill this. And I'm gonna enjoy this. And I think that really helped me. And it doesn't matter who I've worked with. I've worked with a lot of different people. I've really enjoyed everyone I've worked with. And I've tried to make a point of that, especially now as, you're kind of on the back nine of things. Every game is more enjoyable now than it was when I first started. They'll never be the same excitement when you first started. Like, that's unique and separate. But I don't think I've enjoyed what I'm doing any more than I enjoy it now. It was more exciting at the start, but it's not. It's more enjoyable now because I'm not worried about the things I was worried about back then.
What were you worried about when you broadcasted LeBron James' first high school game?
I wasn't worried about anything. I was the only one on our crew that had seen him. Back then I used to go, I used to spend the whole summer scouting high school players. Okay. Because, players stayed longer back then. That was unusual that you'd have a couple guys that, you thought weren't even going to go to college. But I saw him play, I think his sophomore year at the ABCD camp at Teaneck, New Jersey. I saw him 2 years in a row doing that. And he had this great battle with Lenny Cook. And I kind of thought, man, this is a lot. What's being poured into these high school players, especially a guy like LeBron. Like back then, you were kind of going, "Is this over the line? Are we? There is such a thing as too much too soon. What are we doing here?" So when we put the game on, and I was asked to work it, it was Vitale and Walton and Schulman calling the game, and I was a sideline guy, and so I was the only one that had seen it. So when they came to me at the start of the game, I had said, LeBron James is the best high school player I've ever seen. And, you know, I had seen Kobe Bryant, Kevin Garnett, and all that in high school. He was better, just as skilled, but more physically imposing at that age. And I got criticized a lot for that. You know, first of all, a lot of people said, well, what about Lou Alcindor and what about Oscar
Like, I didn't see him in high school.
How old do you think I am? Come on, man. But I didn't feel bad saying it. I really believed it because it was true. But even then, you were kind of going, should we be doing this? You know, because that team was being trotted out all over the place. I did a game that they played in California. They played a game in Los Angeles against Mater Dei. They played, you know, did that one in Cleveland against Oak Hill and all that. So it was a weird situation. Yeah. But you knew, like, this guy's different. Like, he stays healthy. He's Hall of Fame good. He was different.
Wow. Before I move on to the last segment, I have to ask, you were on College Game Day with Bob Knight, right? Mm-hmm. You talked about that you forgot that Coach K, his coach, was Bob Knight. So what was it like now when you got to work on the set with him?
It was great. Coach K had told me when Coach Knight came to work for us after he left Texas Tech. I was actually working with McDonough and Raftery the night that he retired, the night that he quit. And I had to get on a plane and fly down and see him the next day. So I went straight from Milwaukee. We're doing a Marquette game. I went straight from Milwaukee to Lubbock. And I received a phone call from one of our higher ups saying, hey, look, we're talking with him about coming with us. And can you help with that? I was like, I can. I mean, but I was going down there in part to do that and in part to do a sit down interview with him with his stepping down at Texas Tech. So we had already become friends, I guess you'd say. And so we would go on golf trips together. And going on a golf trip with Bob Knight is a unique experience. You know, we went overseas most of the time. And then one year he calls and says, hey, I'm thinking about maybe we should stay in the United States this summer for our trip. And I'm thinking, awesome. God, we can go to Bandon Dunes or Whistling Straits or something like that. And he says, well, I'm thinking North Dakota. And I'm like, what? We went to North Dakota and played golf for like 7 straight days, 36 holes a day in North Dakota. It was great. Played all through the Badlands and all that. We did that every summer. So I knew him pretty well. And so working with him was awesome. We had a really good time, but I was kind of I'd pick him up at the airport and shuttle him around. We had one game. I did games with him too. Like Coach Knight he knew so much about basketball, but he wasn't like real keen on learning every player's name. Yeah. So I did a lot of games with him so that I would say something about the player and then he would make a point afterwards about what the player did or something. So, I was told he liked that and all that. So we did a number of games together, and we were doing a game at Kansas one time, afternoon game. And he calls me at the hotel and says, hey, before we go over the game, let's get something to eat. I was going, okay. So I'm thinking he's like, let's pick up a sandwich on the way to the game. That's not what he meant. Because I stopped at a sandwich place. He goes, no. Let's go over to Applebee's or something. So we stopped at this, and I called the producer, a guy named Aaron Stoikov, and I said, Aaron.
Yeah, I know Stoikov really, really well.
Knight wants to grab a bite to eat. I mean, he wants to go and sit down. And he's like, can you get to the game by tip? And I was going, yeah, I think we can. He goes, go ahead. So we went in there and we were eating, like there were other fans going to the game, and we're in there eating with him. And we got to the game 10 minutes before tip. I had never done that before. And walked in, sat down, and just kind of did the game. And it was a different experience working with them. He had his own way of doing things, and nobody's going to talk him out of it.
Was there ever payback for him giving you crap in '84, making you stick around at the Olympic practice?
No. That was fun. I mean, it actually kind of made you feel good a little bit. One, that he knew you, but no, I never did that. But we had some interesting experiences overseas, and he was a piece of work. We were playing one time at a place in Scotland, and we were walking up to the green. He was just off the green, and he asked me to use. He says, "Let me use your sandwich." So I'm carrying my own bag, and I gave him my sandwich, and he hits the shot up on the green. And then I noticed, well, he had his own. Like, why did you need my sandwich? And he goes, well, I hit a bad shot. I didn't want to throw mine. And he was serious. Like, he was going to hurl mine. And he would, the other thing that he would do is he was pretty frugal, I would say. Like he didn't throw money around. And so he would look for golf balls freaking forever. And it drove.
By the way, he probably got a bunch for free too.
Yeah, that way. I was just about to say it. So he's looking for some golf ball that he'd beat to hell. And I'm like, look, I'll give you a whole sleeve of balls. Let's move on. He's, no, I'm going to find this one. And he kept looking and looking, and he would find other balls, and he'd keep those and put them in his bag. And then I can't remember when this was, but it was after a few golf trips we'd been on. I was in Lubbock, and he had an office. So he had his office, and then it was like an assistant's office that had all the crap people would send him. So fishing poles and lures and all these whatever the fly fishermen have, at golf clubs. And he must have had like 30 boxes of brand new Pro V1s.
Yep.
Titleist Pro V1s. And I'm like, why are you looking for golf balls? You got all these brand new golf balls in there. He's, I don't want to screw those up. That's what they're there for. What are you talking about? So we would always have things like that.
That's so good. All right, Jay. I love talking to you. I love the stories. The segment I like to do is called This Just In. So it's kind of rapid fire questions. And they may spin off into other questions. We'll see. But the best game you've ever witnessed in person?
The 92 Duke Kentucky game in the Elite Eight. It wasn't just the last shot. It was such a well-played game throughout the course of the game. I think both teams shot over 50%. Jamal Mashburn was unbelievable. If he doesn't foul out, Duke probably doesn't win that game, but it was unreal. I'll never forget that game.
Okay. Favorite post-game spot with Raf?
There was a bar in Conshohocken, New Jersey, that we went to that I had to sneak out of. I don't think I climbed through a bathroom door, but I couldn't keep my eyes open anymore, and I had an early flight, and I just had to sneak out, and he never let me forget it.
Favorite golf course you've ever played?
Pine Valley. Not close.
That was quick.
Yeah.
Okay. All-time Duke starting five who played for Coach K?
Either Bobby Hurley or Tommy Amaker at the point. I'd probably go with Bobby Hurley. JJ Redick shooting it. Grant Hill. I'd put it the 3. Christian Leitner I'd have in there, and probably Shane Battier. That team would do pretty well.
That team would do pretty well.
I could coach that team and win.
And by the way, you left off at point guard Jason Williams, Will.
Well, I'm not going to give him the satisfaction of me naming him. I'm going to get a phone call from him saying, what the F, really?
And then at the center,
defense,
Elton Brand.
Brand is a tough one. Yeah, and that's the problem with that thing is you're leaving off like Hall of Fame caliber players. And that's the beauty of it, really, is you got some, like whether North Carolina, UCLA. Like I used to laugh. Like my friends that go to UCLA, I'm going, I know one thing: you're not going to be the best player ever played there.
That's for sure. Would you say Grant Hill is the best player to ever come out of Duke?
Yes. Yeah. Leitner's the most accomplished, and right there as best. But Grant was the most talented, and I think the best. And if you look at, and I know you look at his first 7 years in the NBA, he was Sandy Koufax. I mean, his numbers his first 7 years, 6 or 7, I can't remember the exact number, but only 5 guys in the history of the game put up the numbers that Grant did, scoring, rebounding, assists, and steals. And guys like, Jordan and LeBron, Bird, Oscar Robertson, guys like Jerry West, guys like that. I mean, Grant was a marvel, just an amazing player.
He was different, no doubt about it. Favorite team growing up?
UCLA. Yeah, that wasn't a close call. So when I was a kid, Bill Walton and Dave Myers were my favorite players. And UCLA never lost. If they lost a game, I wouldn't come out of my room for 2 days because it just seemed like the world was coming to an end. They won every game. UCLA basketball is how I learned about gambling. I didn't know anything about. I played for a travel team as a young kid, and we were in Las Vegas. And back then, your parents didn't go on these trips with you, so it was the coach of the team named Dick Spidell and one of the parents. I think it was Mark Murphy's dad. They wanted to go out, so they didn't want us running around the hotel. So our coach made a bet with us that he said, "I'll take UCLA against Idaho State, and I'll give you guys 50 points. And if you win the bet, McDonald's, I'll pay the rest of the trip." And we were like, "Deal, 50 points." So we sat and watched that game until well after midnight, and UCLA won by 51.
No way.
Yeah, and because the game was on tape delay. We didn't know that. We didn't know what tape delay was. And so they kept us in front of a TV for 2.5 hours while they went out gambling and drinking, and we didn't get in any trouble.
And the moral of the story is, if the spread is big, people are still watching.
Yeah. If they got McDonald's on it and they're 5th graders, you got them.
I got a text one day. I was doing a football game, Oklahoma State at UTSA, University of Texas, San Antonio. It's like a 26.5 point spread, right? Like it's ridiculous. And UTSA scores a touchdown with about a minute to go. They're celebrating as if they've just won the national championship. My phone, I get a text from a buddy. He goes, "Backdoor, baby. Fuck yeah." And I go, "Dude, you bet on this game?" He's like, "You're broadcasting it. I had to watch it. So yeah."
Every call makes somebody happy.
Yeah. Okay. A couple more questions. The best perk of still being a lawyer?
I don't know whether it's a perk. I still get people calling me when they get a traffic ticket to help them with local counsel. So I do that for my friends. I'll get them local counsel so they can get their ticket dealt with. But that happens quite a bit.
Yeah, I'll keep that in my mind. All right, and I have to ask, what is your wingspan?
I don't even know. I don't think I have long arms for a guy my height. Wingspan wasn't a thing when I was a player. We knew that Sam Perkins had long arms and stuff like that, but we didn't talk about length back then. But I realized how valuable it was, and so that's become the bane of my existence. I say it 1,000 times every draft.
But I think you're saying it now just to make people drink.
I did for a time. I did. I thought this would actually be more interesting to people. So one year, I intentionally did not say wingspan the entire draft. I came up with other things like he has great linear extent in space. And I went because I knew it was a drinking game. So I went the whole draft. I did not say wingspan once. And I thought it would get more attention. I did it for my own enjoyment.
Right.
But I was really surprised that more people didn't go, "He didn't say wingspan." Like, what the hell? I was, I had my tequila ready to go and I was looking at lit and nothing happened.
Well, I'm sure people will get lit at the draft again. And Jay, always so much fun talking with you. These stories were great. I learned a ton, and I can't wait to go back and call Raf and be like, "So you let him sneak out of a bar in New Jersey? How'd that happen?"
He did more than that. Did he tell you about the Irish side of the menu thing?
Oh, he did. That was at Moe's in Milwaukee. Yep. And
I think
he said he turned back. He goes, "Whoo!"
I think he's still paying off that bill.
How many bottles of wine do you think you guys ordered that night?
I don't know, because there were probably 12 people that wound up there. And Dave McDonough was calling, I think, the Rose Bowl that night. So it was Dave Pash and me and Raft, and Dave and I got to the restaurant first. And that was just when my eyes were going. I needed readers, and I couldn't read the menu. So I asked the waiter, like, okay, what's a good cab or something? He said, well, I like this one. And he left, and Dave goes, yeah, that's like $250 a bottle or whatever it was. And I said, I was like, don't worry about it, Dave. It's just great working with you. We'll celebrate that. And I was thinking, okay, well, just one bottle of that. I'll eat it. And I was planning on getting the check anyway. Raph and I used to almost like sneak our credit cards, and he beat me that time way in advance. And when they brought him the check, I mean, there were at least 10 bottles of that, at least. I shouldn't say at least, but I'm guessing 10. So let's say 10, because there were at least a dozen of us there. And when he opened up that little leather thing with the check in it, and he goes, "Holy shit!" then he gives me the, "Would you mind ordering from the Irish side of the menu, just one?" But I had totally forgotten about that. When everybody got there, he started laughing, having a good time, and ordering and everything. And I didn't process that they were bringing the same bottle over and over again.
Well, that's again what makes this job so much fun, is that you have stories like that. Raph's still paying off the debt to this day, and you can hold that one over you. So it works out well.
Very well.
Yeah. Jay, thank you so much for doing this, man. I really appreciate it. And
My pleasure,
I can't wait to get back on the golf course
Let's
soon.
get out there soon.
Yes.
I'm getting
Sounds good. Yeah, no kidding. See
All
ya.
right, brother. Be good.